in Kona.
Did you take your water pill?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, are we gonna put anything in our chest or what? We'll use some of the waters that are in the car.
Yeah,
How many apples do you want to take?
I want to take,
I got my water.
this is the Waiapio Lookout.
Okay, we were here.
Is it recording or what?
Yeah,
Yes.
Our Artwork and Visitor Center.
Richard's life started out very tragically. Within the first 3 years of his life, his infant baby sister died, his mother died, and his father died. By the time he was 3, he had no mommy, no daddy, no siblings, and was raised by his grandmother here. He was an only child, so he inherited all of the cattle ranch. His grandmother was Elizabeth Jane Dowsett. She was married to John Parker III. John Parker III, her husband, died when he was 19, so there was a lot of tragedy. This poor grandmother of Richard's who raised him, she had lost her husband, her daughter, her son-in-law, and her granddaughter. So Richard was very much alone, when he was a child. With all that tragedy with his grandmother, though, she poured all of her attention and her affection in Richard. Our great general manager, A.W. Carter, as well, put all of his affection and attention into Richard, raising him to run the cattle ranch because he was the only one. Richard lived, even though his childhood was tragic, the rest of his life was kind of magical. When he reaches the age of 20, the ranch is run by the family called the Carters, A.W. Carter and Hartwell Carter, and it's run brilliantly. There's not any way Richard's going to do a better job for them, so he's in that position in life when so many of us would like to be in, and owning something and really not having a position other than owning. So he talks to Mr. Carter about going to college, and Mr. Carter says, well, that's a good idea, you should go to college. So he goes to 1 year in Stanford. Why only a year? Well, he gets bitten by the acting bug while he's at Stanford. He drops out of college. He goes to Pasadena Playhouse for 2 years. He marries an actress there. He learns his craft, singing, dancing, acting, and he runs off to Broadway in the 40s. And as the fates would have it, our cattle baron in waiting becomes a Broadway star in the 40s. He's a singer, he's a dancer, he stars with Mary Martin, Carol Channing, Eve Arden. He's an A-lister. At the end of the 40s, he gets a divorce, sadly. His 2 boys are in New York with their mother. Here's a chance again, the end of the 40s, to take over that cattle ranch. Well, the ranch was run brilliantly for 40 years by a gentleman named A.W. Carter, who was a godsend to the community. When he retires, he turns over the ranch management to his son, Hartwell Carter, who runs it again brilliantly. So when Richard gets the chance after his divorce to come back, Hartwell takes over. So again, he's in that position where he doesn't have to do anything really. So he says, what else would I like to do in my life before, having to run the ranch? He goes, well, I'd like to live in Europe. So he gives himself a decade to go live in Europe. He buys an apartment in Paris. He buys a house in Venice, Italy. And from 50 to roughly 62, he tours the continent performing. He's a big band guy. He's a Broadway guy. He can sing in French, German, Italian, and Hawaiian. He takes a lot of Hawaiian songs and ringy-dings them up, Sinatra style. So you can imagine being in Europe in the 50s, how many big band guys are singing and dancing in Hawaiian. He has no competition. Very successful. 62, after about 20 years of performing, he says, okay, it's family time, legacy time. I'm going to come back and I'm going to run that cattle ranch like I was trained to. So he comes back, and from 62 to 92, he runs the cattle ranch successfully. Upon his death, he puts the ranch into a charitable trust. He never says publicly why he does that, because as you can imagine, it's very bittersweet. He has sons. During their teenage years, their mother allows them to come live with Richard and work on the ranch. So he does have heirs, but he divorces the family from the ranch upon his death and puts it into a charitable trust for the community. Again, because of the bittersweet nature of it, he never publicly says why he does this, but there's lots of clues. I mean, the biggest one happens in 1959 when Hawaii becomes a state in the United States of America. And what comes with statehood? Taxes, the estate tax in particular. So that's going to be a 40% whack every time the owner dies. To cattle ranches, to family farms, that can be devastating because a lot of times they don't have pocket money. They have assets. So what do you do if you can't come up with the tax dollars? That's the trouble. So he sees that looming ahead of him in his life. He's gone in his lifetime from about 500,000 acres down to 200,000. 2 world wars and the Great Depression took a toll on the price of beef. So he's, cattle ranching is an iffy business. It's difficult under any circumstances. There's usually more bad years than good years. So he knows it's a difficult business. And I'm sure as he was standing here looking up at the beautiful green mountains of Waimea and seeing the cattle up there, seeing Hawaiian real estate values just shoot through the roof, he knows that land up in these hills, the land out in the plains, it's worth so much more than the cattle ranch to developers. So he's thinking, okay, I don't want to put my family in a situation, where the only way to pay the tax man is to sell. So he sets up a trust. Sets up trust funds for his boys, for his grandkids, and then he puts the ranch into a foundation trust. He names 4 beneficiaries because he very much wants to benefit the community of Waimea. He picks HPA, Hawaii Preparatory Academy, over there. He picks Parker School, a little private school that he helped start. He picks the North Hawaii Community Hospital, and he starts a charity organization called the Richard Smart Fund, which last year gave $2.5 million to the local elementary school. You know. Since his death in 1992, over $14 million has gone from the trust back into the community. So Richard's final wishes were that the community would benefit from Parker Ranch, that he could save the cattle ranch, because the brilliance of his trust fund is all this land up in these hills is zoned agriculture, for the cattle ranch. And in his will, he said lands essential to the cattle ranch must be maintained. Well, why did he do that? Well, because as long as there's zoned agriculture, nobody's building resorts up there. So he saves the cattle ranch, he benefits the community, he takes care of his kids, and the reason we have these houses open today is for Richard, because he wanted his family legacy to live on and people to know of him and his family after they were gone. This house, Richard moved in from 12 miles out in the country, just so people could see the original home and their last home. It was taken apart piece by piece and rebuilt right there. So Richard's last name was Smart. His mother was Thelma Parker. I think he was smart in name and deed. And today, Lori has put a little wreath on his mausoleum here to honor him. So thank you very much, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I wonder if this is going to be the helicopter we're taking. Well, we are checked in, so I have a feeling that's our helicopter.
All of our DJs will be there online as well, so. All right, it's going to be an edition of 2 acts. All right, so you tell me who this is, because it's from...
It's like their form of graffiti, with this being such a barren place, is by use of white rocks. And we keep on seeing these on the highway.
Now, National Historical Park. I know it's a tongue twister, yeah. But that name, Pu'uhonua Honau, was a name used 700 years prior to any Western contact. First person out there from the West, Captain Cook. He comes in about 1776 and he says, "Hey, I discovered you guys." I mean, we were already here. And he says, "You know what? I'm going to name these islands here after my sponsor, the Earl of Sandwich. I'm going to call it the Sandwich Islands." Well, I'm glad the name didn't take, because I don't want to be a sandwich person. Anyway, there was another guy was here also, the William Ellis, who was a missionary person. And he was looking for a suitable site for a church. And while he was here, he saw some activity going on. And he asked the native guys, "Hey, what is this place? What's going on here?" And they told him, "This is the Pu'uhonua Honau now." For some odd reason, he had a hard time with that name. I don't know why. But he started calling it the City of Refuge. And that's where the name came about. He thought this area reminded him of the cities of refuge as mentioned in the Old Testament in the Bible. I mean, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
Yes.
But there is mention, cities of refuge. These were places where a lawbreaker went to seek asylum, like a safe house. As long as he was there in a particular city, he was safe. No harm could come to him. You couldn't touch him. You couldn't even arrest him. But there was a catch, of course. That lawbreaker had to stay there either for the rest of his life or until the high priest died. As long as he was there, he was safe. Now here, a lawbreaker came for asylum. True. But he was forgiven of his wrongdoing. He came right back out into society, a free person again. Nobody lived here. It was never a city. But the name City of Refuge stayed. I grew up with that name. This park was established July 1st, 1961 as the City of Refuge National Historical Park. By 1978, we figured it all out. He says, it's the wrong name. So through an act of Congress mandated by law and the will of the Hawaiian people, the name City of Refuge, it has been taken off all highway signs, most of the maps. And in place we have the original proper name, which is you're gonna say it with me, okay? Pu'u,
Pu'u,
Honua,
Honua,
or Ho Now Now.
oh ho now now.
Piece of cake.
Don't ask us to repeat
I'm
it.
gonna ask you again now. I'm gonna make it a point to ask you guys. But that name, if you were to translate it literally, it has nothing to do with a city. Literally, all it means is a sacred or sanctified hill at the place called Ho Now Now. A long, long time ago, my ancestors left a land far, far to the south of us. Exactly where, we don't know for sure. We can only speculate. But the closest we've come to is the Marquesas. Marquesas, it's a group of islands about 2,600 miles southeast of us. We say the Marquesas because a lot of similarities there in our language, in our culture, in our tradition. Now comes the big question: why? Why did the Polynesians leave that land to come here? You know what? You don't know. They may have been war. They may have had wars going on. They may have had overpopulation problems. Maybe there were health issues. Maybe they were adventurers. Maybe they were out for a 3-hour cruise. We don't know. All we know is that they got out here on large voyaging canoes and they brought along with them their families, their dreams, their ideas, their customs, their tradition, and their religion. And from that religion evolved the kapu system. Kapu. The kapu is a set of religious or sacred laws, more or less by which the people ran their lives by. Example of a kapu. If a chief walked by here, as a commoner, I could not look directly at him. The punishment was death. Your shadow couldn't fall upon the chief's land. The punishment was death. A woman couldn't eat certain kind of foods like coconuts, banana, pork, because those kind of foods were used as offerings for the gods. They were known as kinolau. A woman who thought it was being unclean, the punishment was death. If the fish was spawning out here in the lagoon, you got caught fishing at that particular time with that particular kind of fish, guess what?
You got it.
Here's what you might like. A woman could not cook for the men. But don't get any idea, that was a long time ago, okay? So these are the kind of laws we're talking about. And visitors always ask me, well, what about murder and robbery and rape and all that kind of things? And I tell them, believe it or not, the early Polynesians, they didn't know how to lie, cheat, or steal until the missionaries showed up, which is really odd. Anyway, so to break a kapu, to break a law, punishment was death. Now when I say death, it didn't matter who you were, man, woman, or child, it didn't matter what law you broke. You break the law, you pay the price, you die. And when I say child, 12 years and below, the parents are responsible for the child's actions. 13 and above, that person is responsible for his or her own actions. No excuses. Today we have young people, they commit a crime, and they get away with it because they're juvenile. Something's wrong here. Anyway, so back in the old days, you broke a kapu, you break a law, punishment was death. If you could make it here safely to the pu'uhonua, you were forgiven of your wrongdoing and given a second chance to life. Kind of like confession. The trick was to get here. It wasn't a walk in the park. You had to swim to get to this area. And, well, whoever saw you break the law, for example, if you broke the law, say, you kind of fit the profile, No, just pretend. Say you broke the law. Say your father saw you, or your wife, or your son, or your best friend. It was that person's responsibility to carry out the punishment. Think about that one. It's a tough one. I mean, killing somebody is bad enough. Killing a loved one, how hard that is. I mean, if my ex-wife, if my daughter broke the law, I would have a hard time killing her. But if I witnessed my daughter breaking the kapu, it was my responsibility to carry out the punishment. If I did not fulfill my obligation, I too could be killed. Or they might harm my family, destroy my village. So it wasn't a casual thing. And the only entry into a pu'uhonua is by water. Are you a good swimmer, sir? Well, let me tell you, sir, when your life depends on it, you can walk on water, man. So anyway, you're swimming out here, and I think she's gonna backstroke you down. No? But once you got within the confines of the wall, you were safe. No harm could come to you. You met a priest, and he forgave whatever wrongdoing you had done. Stayed about 2 days, and then you swept back out of your prison. Simple. There were three uses for the puhunua. The first use was for the lawbreakers. The second use was for wartime. Hawaii was a paradise, yeah. But they had territorial disputes and differences. They had some fierce fighting going on. Wars didn't last too long, 10 days at the most. But there was a lot of bloodshed. And they gave a formal warning. They said, hey guys, we're going to have a war here next week. All the women, the children, the sick, the elderly left the village came here. Probably by boat. And then the following Thursday, they had the war on the outside, just amongst the warriors. After the war was over, peace came about, people all came back out again. Now, I think that's pretty civilized as war goes, man. The last use was for defeated warrior. Now, when the war was going on, the chief had to be at the war. He was the general. He was conducting things. And as the war progressed, somehow he went down. When he got killed, he went down, war is over. And if you happened to be on his side, you lost the war, you lost your life. They did not take you as prisoners. However, if a defeated warrior could safely make it to the puhunua, he too was afforded a second chance in life. So all these things was in use here in puhunua. Aloha! How are you guys doing?
Fine, thanks.
Good? You cold?
A little bit.
Yes.
I have to go up there for just a second.
Okay. What's the name of this park again? Pu'u,
Pu'u, canoe,
Honua,
Onua,
or
ho now?
Yes. You know, I really appreciate when a visitor takes the time to see the name of the park. It's a beautiful name. Honua, ho now. And you know, it bothers me when somebody says, well, whatever. Come on, you know, give it a shot. Try it, you know. Anyway, at one time there were over 30 puhunuas throughout the Hawaiian Islands. Every major district of each island had a place like this. So if you broke the law on Maui, so you didn't have to swim all the way across. A long swim. You went to the closest one. But after 1819, with the death of Kamehameha I and the coming of outside Western influence, we had no further use for the Hawaiian religion. You know, they told the Hawaiian people, hey, you guys, I think you're pagans, you're idol worshippers, you're wrong. You better put on some clothes. The hula was a lewd act. So everything to remind the people of their past, especially of their religion, had to be destroyed. So they were all destroyed except for this one. It's the only puhunua left still intact, the last one. The wall you see out there is about 700 years old, 1,000 feet long, 10 feet high. It has been through a tsunami, several hurricanes, numerous earthquakes still here. It did things really well back then. The big wall out there, all it's doing is separating the palace grounds, which we are looking at today, right now, from the puhunua, which is on the other side. It was an area about 6.5, 7 acres. It wasn't really a hospitable place, but it offered you a second chance to life. So that's what it's for. Out towards the point out here is a temple called Hale o Kiawe Heiau. Hale o Kiawe Heiau has been completely restored. It's dedicated to the god Lono. The early Hawaiians say they had many, many gods. They had gods for everything, but they only had 4 major gods. Can anybody tell me what the name of the gods? Okay, they were Ku, Kane, Kanaloa, and Lono. Lono, he was the god of agriculture, god of farming, god of the wind, god of the clouds, the god of games, the god of health, the god of peace, the god of life. And because he was the god of life, no human sacrifices were conducted here. Just offerings of food, fish, food, stuff like that. So when I work out here sometimes, which I do work at night sometimes, 12 o'clock in the morning, I walk past the temple, I hike in the back country, check out all the barrel caves, check out all the boundaries, come back in, and visitors always ask me, are there any ghosts? Are there any spirits? And they always whisper. I don't know why. I mean, I admit I feel a presence out here, but I feel a strong spiritual presence. I feel comfortable with it. Nothing scary. I'd be more afraid of being a live person at 1 o'clock in the morning out here than what's out here. You know, but as we're looking out here today right now, we see all these interesting looking plants. These are all considered native plants. Plants that early pollinators brought with them across the Pacific 380. When they first got out here, there was nothing. In fact, this island was still young yet, barely 1 million years old. They didn't look like this, a couple of shrubs. But they bought these kind of plants because they were familiar with the plants for food, for medicine, for clothing, for dyes, for building material. You know, when you guys drove in, you saw all these beautiful plants out there, all the beautiful flowers and trees. 95% of what you saw out there were all foreign introduced plants. Here in Hawaii, anything and everything will grow anywhere, anytime. Look, they're growing out of rocks. Doing pretty well. So what we've done, we've taken out all the exotic, foreign, colorful plants, put back the native stuff because this is what Hawaii was like before Captain Cook's arrival. So if you came to see what old Hawaii was like, this is it. Any questions? Any concerns?
Okay, so this is a Hawaiian cricket that the park ranger gave me. So this is the bay he's talking about. And there is the temple. And supposedly these big walls are where the remains of all of those kings were. This is the painted church. Those sure are tiny stairs.
Paintings all done 1890 to 1904. I mean, you have rainbows over there, and no one's gonna draw off here. Well, if anyone's interested, I'm gonna show. Stabilize, and what they're doing is they're actually using as much traditional method as possible, so if you have aluminum ladders, metal ladders, they're actually, so they can pass on those traditions. Water actually kind of shallow. It's not like on the volcano, but there's always
Could that be connected with the earthquake?
could have been, but it's actually really small. Figure it out in Wild Volcanoes National Park. The distance between you and the lava would be a lot. And so it's not really and actually, if you go to the Jack,
Quite a salad bowl you got there.
how'd you like that bowl?
Big salad, huh?
Yeah.
Are held in place by gravity. No mortar, no cement.
This is the Lulu Valley Lookout. Out. It's at the end of the road. You see part of this when we were in the helicopter ride. Famous statue of the king, but the first one got lost at sea, which is this. The other one is in Honolulu.
Keep it open, and today there's about 7 miles allowed over between the two ends of the river.
Here's one of the geckos.
That's the bed and breakfast there, right?
How do you get there, by mule?
A helicopter.
Oh, helicopter.
We've arrived in Volcano, and we're going to get ready to look at what some of what Volcano has, but this is where we're staying. This is the mud room.
Collects water.
You can tell the people who own this house like antiques.
Water is not only safe to drink, but it even tastes good. Drink up.
Somebody with money has this.
We're at Volcano Park. So you can see how far away we are, because there's the dot. Hold it.
I still got one. Ready?
Bigger forces at work then. You can see the lava. Yeah. The lava from the back. In Sicily. In Sicily. They used to go out the back.
It was rough. Okay, love ya. Bye. Get in touch with my housekeepers.
Enjoying your
This early in the
table setting.
morning? I can't believe I'm up this early.
I
My
know.
sister is a slave driver.
We have heard from you how much you do not believe you're up this early.
That's right. I'm too old to be up this.
To look across the Iki fountain of lava into the air. Now, those that took advantage of it at that time, because this eruption only went on from mid-November to mid-December 1859, so it was only a month in length that this Kilauea Iki eruption occurred.
These are the lava tubes.
Okay.
Want to have to rescue cars up there.
Is there another couple in here before us?
good for her.
Here, Gina.
Thank you, Jerry. The Tsunami Museum, and we're going into the vault to see a movie.
Cincinnati. That's a Laura. No, they didn't have the house up there. So.
Now, see, we are at the Lyman Museum, and we have made feathered flowers. I am doing the gammas. That's my artistic impression.
There you go. Your memory of the Lyman Museum. You haven't been.
The third year, we had it on for 1 week, at a time.
Right.
But this year, we have it on for 10 weeks, so it's a long stay.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nick, I should get that of you. Just 21 years old. He started taking classes from the reef for the last about 3 years now.
Unified by the first king Kamehameha from this area because the wonderful forests and tropical hardwoods up there were so plentiful that he could build all these war canoes to unify the islands with. So it was from this area that started. This house behind you was built, in front of you, was built about 1839 by the Lymans. Originally, they had a house down the hill. There were a couple of houses only on the hill at that time. But this one here dates from 1839. It's the oldest wood frame structure on the island. The history of the house actually goes back to this fellow who, actually a Hawaiian boy from the islands, who during the time of the wars, his family was on the wrong side of the battle. His family were all killed. He survived, and he made it to the other side of the island. He got over to Kona, and from there he boarded a ship that took him to Connecticut, where he came to the attention of the president of Yale University. So over the next 8 or so years, he lived with them and other educators. He translated the book of Genesis into Hawaiian. He learned English very well, and he wrote a Hawaiian English dictionary as well. But his main idea was to try to get missionaries, Christian missionaries from New England, to come to the Sandwich Islands here to bring Christianity to the people. And he almost succeeded in that. Well, he did succeed in encouraging the mission group. There was a mission group there called the American Board of Commissioners of Foreign Missions. They agreed to take up the call and come over here to Hawaiian Islands, but he couldn't make it. He died before the first mission took off. They came in waves, or companies they call them. The first one came in 1820, and David and Sarah Lyman came in the 5th company in 1831. And when they came here, there were Hawaiian homes built in this fashion here. These are hale, or Hawaiian homes with a steep thatched roof and very few windows, low doorway. But inside is an open arrangement, which the missionaries from Connecticut felt were scandalous. They didn't think that was a proper environment for raising children. So, when they built their house, it looked somewhat like a hale with a thatched roof. But of course, inside was totally different, with doorways, walls, partitions, and so forth. In 1856, they removed the thatch and raised the roof a bit and put on corrugated metal roofing, like the kind that's so popular here to this very day. So the house, you will see as we go through it, is in really, really good condition. It's in remarkably good condition, and we take good care of it.
What kind of wood?
They used local wood originally for the house called koa. The beams in the roof are made of ohia. They're extremely durable, very hard woods, and as you'll see, they're still in good condition. Some termite damage, but mostly good. The flooring in some places, I think the original flooring was removed. I think it was all at one time koa, but they've installed Douglas fir that became available in the 1850s. He had a cousin up in Oregon by that time, so he said, "Send me that, and I'll pay you with money, real cash." So as you walk around, you'll notice two different kinds of flooring. Symmetrical arrangement of rooms. It's a little bit vernacular or adjusted because they put on a dining room over here and an annex over here for the purpose of his office and for trading with the Hawaiian people.
The hanging lobster claw.
Well, that makes sense.
Origin Peru.
It sure does look like a hanging lobster claw. This is the Banyan Canyon.
Have to go like this, and I'll just get you from your shoulder up.
I can smell them. We'll smell something.
Look how long the feathers are on that one up there.
A peace lily.
Now we're going to see a 3D film at the Imiloa Astronomy Center.
Have you considered walking over next door into their driveway?
You have some big floats I can pop out. Those floats will keep us floating while I get the rotor stopped. In the meantime, we'll be taking our headsets and seatbelts off, preparing to exit the aircraft. Once we do get those rotors stopped, then on my command, Gina and I are going to pull the orange handles back on each door in order to jettison those doors. Once those doors are off, then on my command, we'll exit into the water, swim clear of the aircraft, pull the life vests up over our heads, pull the red handles to inflate them. And if that doesn't work, there are tubes on either side we can blow into to inflate them. And then we'll hold on to each other, stay in a tight group, and wait for somebody to come pick us up. In the meantime, I'll tell you about the 42 different species of sharks that live in the Hawaiian Islands. The good news is 2 of them are plankton eaters. Alrighty. Now way out ahead of us, that flat expanse of lava out by the shore is where the community of Kalapani used to be, and that was a village that was established about 850 years ago and was covered over by lava in 1990. Now we're going to see where the lava makes it down through the lava tube system and hits the ocean and creates new land. Along the coast here, about 540 acres of new land has been created since the Pu'u event started erupting. And when that lava hits the sea, it cools explosively, shattering into tiny little fragments. Those fragments become the grains of sand on the black sand beach. And the grains that aren't large enough to settle out get suspended in the water and carried off by the current. That's why it looks kind of a murky green like glacier water. Now these lava shelves build rather quickly, but they're extremely unstable geologic structures, and they tend to snap off once in a while and slide down the slope towards the ocean floor. Now you can see in the distance out ahead of us, the trees aren't looking too healthy. The reason is that there was a forest fire that went through there about 5 years ago. And the only reason that the rainforest was able to be ignited was because we were in the middle of a drought. And it lit off about 4,000 acres.
And notice you always stay on the upwind side.
Yeah, don't want to breathe too much sulfur dioxide. And then ahead of us, the smoke is where the fissure D, or fissure, opened up on July 21st. So all this lava that's down below us here that doesn't have any vegetation on it is all since July 21st. This smoke that we're following along is where there's an active lava tube system venting off gases from the lava tube.
Kind of like the surface of the moon or something.
Isn't it? This all used to be rainforest 25 years ago. Now down to our left here on your side, Kristen, you can see this glowing red hole. That's a skylight to the lava tube. So there's a river of lava flowing down there. That's Pahoehoe lava. If it's a steep gradient, it can get up to 35 miles per hour. So can you see that down to the right there, Gina? The glowing lava tube hole. This forested area ahead of us has roads and houses in it. This used to be the Royal Garden subdivision, and it's a really good example of why you should always consult your local volcanologist before you buy real estate on the big island. Now this dark swath of lava ahead of us with the smoke coming off it is where the lava went through this area about 3.5 months ago. Took about 4 days. And out to our right is Jack's red roof lava house, that little red roofed house. And that is now a bed and breakfast, and once in a while we'll drop people off there, and if you're still there after a couple of days, we'll come pick you up. And way out to our right, on the far edge of the lava flow, you can see where it meets the light brown grass. That's where the West Road closure, the Chain of Craters Road is. That road used to do a big loop all the way around to Hilo until 1992 when the lava started flowing across it. In 1994 they quit trying to keep it open, and today there's about 7 miles of lava between the two ends of the road. Now way out ahead of us, that flat expanse of lava out by the shore is where the community of Kalapani used to be, and that was a village that was established about 850 years ago and was covered over by lava in 1990. This smoke that we're following along is where there's an active lava tube system venting off gases from the lava tube.
Kind of like the surface of the moon or something.
Isn't it? This all used to be rainforest 25 years ago. Now down to our left here on your side, Kristen, you can see this glowing red hole. That's a skylight to the lava tube. So there's a river of lava flowing down there. That's Pahoehoe lava. If it's a steep gradient, it can get up to 35 miles per hour. So can you see that down to the right there, Gina? The glowing lava tube hole. This forested area ahead of us has roads and houses in it. This used to be the Royal Garden subdivision, and it's a really good example of why you should always consult your local volcanologist before you buy real estate on the Big Island. Now this dark swath of lava ahead of us with the smoke coming off it is where the lava went through this area about 3.5 months ago. Took about Now, about where the lava is going into the ocean here used to be an interesting archaeological site, which is called the Wahaula Heiau. Wahaula means red mouth, Heiau means temple, or more directly translates to the place time stops. That was a place that was established by a Kahuna Nui, or high priest, who arrived here around 1275 AD. His name was Pa'au, and when Pa'au arrived here, he felt the Hawaiians had become a little lax in their devotion to the gods, so he instituted a system of kapu, or laws, and those laws could have pretty dire consequences for seemingly simple infractions. For instance, if you were to step on the shadow of an elite or a ruling class person, you could be put to death. He also brought human sacrifice to the island, and the Wahaula Heiau is one of the places where the sacrifices were performed, thus the name Red Mouth. Anyway, that was covered over by lava back in 1997. There's a similar place at the northwest point of the island called the Mo'okini Heiau, and up there were over 10,000 people sacrificed over a period of about 500 years. So it's kind of an interesting, though eerie, archaeological site to visit if you get a chance. A lot of times people are kind of shocked by that number of 10,000 people being sacrificed, but Sometimes we have to remain anthropologically objective looking at modern world culture. In the past 95 years of industrialized warfare, about 180 million people have been killed on planet Earth. And that's twice as many people as there were on the entire planet at the height of the Roman Empire. The different cultures, different times, different sacrifices. A little bit of energy there.
Within your soul, in the essence of truth and right, love makes the circle roll. Near me stand in line, waiting for some sacred sign, but to find the balance is the purpose of this time. To restore the balance of the universal mind. And in the presence of my Lord of light and love, everything I see aspiring to be free. When I call to thee, come on bended knee, surrender to the all-pervading.
Everybody still doing okay with the turns?
Reflections of the one surrounding me with love. Your presence.
I can see that breakwater out ahead of us. That keeps the harbor pretty calm unless you get an 80-foot tsunami coming over the top of it like they had back in 1946. That tsunami was generated by an earthquake in Alaska, hit the east side of the island here, and killed about 140 people. Today we have a little bit better tsunami warning system, so hopefully that won't happen again. Tsunamis have actually played a pretty significant role in the history here in Hawaii. These islands are out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Excuse me for a second. Tsunami from it. And back in the 1840s in Hilo, there were some rather zealot Christian missionaries who were having a hard time convincing the Hawaiians of their sinful ways, until a tsunami came on shore one day and killed about 100 of them. They thought that was the wrath of the new god that they had heard about, so they converted en masse, and they actually baptized 1,900 Hawaiians in one day in Hilo Bay, and that year they converted 7,500 Hawaiians islands wide. There was a majority of the Hawaiians left over after Europeans first showed up. When Europeans first showed up, they're estimated to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 700,000 Hawaiians, and they were reduced in number to less than 10,000 through disease and warfare over a period of about 60 years. So it's quite amazing that there's as much Hawaiian culture left today as there is, which is testament to the resilience of the Hawaiian people and the validity of their belief system. I can see these fields out ahead of us have been cleared. Those fields are cleared to grow sugarcane, and sugarcane was originally brought here by the Polynesians, who are the descendants of the Lapita culture. And the Lapita culture originally came from New Guinea, and that's also where sugarcane evolved. So they carried sugarcane with them as they migrated eastward through the islands. It was kind of the Red Bull of the day. They would snap a chunk off, chew on it, get a sugar rush, and be good for a few hours of rowing. It wasn't until 1835 that it was grown as a commercial crop here on the Hawaiian Islands. And those first commercial crops are over on the island of Kauai. And it was big business here on the Big Island until 1996 when the last sugar mill closed down. Since then, they've had to kind of diversify the economy a little bit, relying on other sources of income, like orchids, anthurium, and protea, which are ornamental plants, macadamia nuts, and coffee, and one other crop they don't talk too much about.
That's different than taro,
What's that?
sugar cane.
Oh yeah, yeah. Taro is a root vegetable. You'll see it growing. It grows in sort of ponds, and so it's got a big root on it about that big, and these long stemmed big leaves on it. And
Do they grow any taro here, or?
yeah, yeah. Like if you're at the luau's and you eat poi, that's what poi is taro, kind of mooshed up. I eat it all the time. It's really good. It's got lots of good trace minerals in it, lots of iron. And I have a little 9-month-old boy, so he eats a lot of it too. Good first food. Anyway, the thing with Lono was that he fell in love with a princess, and That was the good part. The bad part was he felt she'd been unfaithful to him, so he killed her, and in her last dying breath she said that she loved only Lono. That of course broke his heart, because he realized what a completely stupid thing he had done, and he, as strange things that gods do in mythology, sometimes he wrestled all the guys on the island to try to calm his heart. That didn't do it for him, so he sailed away vowing to return one day. And when he returned, he was going to sail around the island, which was what we would call clockwise. And so the Hawaiians every year during the festival of Makahiki, anticipating the return of Lono, would go around to the heiaus carrying sort of a crossed piece of wood with white kapa cloth draped on it. It looked just like the sails on Captain Cook's ship. And so they would make this procession around the island, going from heiau to heiau, carrying that symbol of Lono. And it just happened that that was when Captain Cook showed up. And while he was circling the island looking for a good anchorage, he was going around at the same time they were with those sails out there. And so when he made anchor in Kealakekua Bay, they thought that he was the god Lono returning. And so the kahuna, or wise priest, met him at the, or Kahuna Nui met him at the shore and took him up to the temple thinking he was the god Lono returning. And so they tried feeding him some food, which had, they would leave food out for Lono in the temples. It was not in very good shape, so Captain Cook refused it. They got him fresh food, he still refused it. And so they thought, he must want us to chew it up for him, so they chewed it up for him. And eventually he ended up taking a little bit of the food. And they draped him in sort of red cloth and everything. It was quite the thing. And so anyway, obviously he got mistaken for the god Lono, which was a very good thing. They were treated like gods for about 4 or 5 weeks while they got provisions there, and then it was time for them to be on their way. And so they set out to sea, and about 4 days offshore, they were in their 2 boats, the Discovery and the Resolution. They got into a storm and it broke the foremast on the Resolution, so they limped it back to Kealakekua Bay thinking they would enjoy the same hospitality they had left behind, only to find that the Kahuna Nui was a pretty smart guy and he realized things like that don't happen to gods. And also they happened to show up during the ascent of Kukaile Moku, which was the next god that they worshiped. And Kukaile Moku was the god of war, and they knew that both gods can't be in the same place at the same time, kind of thing, so they realized Captain Cook and his men weren't gods after all, and some mischief ensued. They stole one of their boats, took it back to the shore. Captain Cook and his men organized a party to go retrieve that boat, and when they got on shore, they were met by a mob of angry Hawaiians who was tired of them being there, so they got chased back to their boat. Captain Cook didn't make it back on, and he was slipping and sliding on the rocks of Kealakekua Bay, firing his pistol trying to scare them off. That trick worked really well with the Polynesians in the past, but it didn't work too well with the fearless Hawaiians, and they proceeded to beat and stab him to death on the shores of Kealakekua Bay. And no pun intended, but ironically, he was stabbed with a piece of iron that they had taken in trade. And that was the end of Captain Cook. But much to the dismay of his crew members, or his crewmen, they kept his remains, which was what they would do with the powerful men that they had killed, because they would strip the flesh off the bones and keep the bones. They believed that a person's mana or energy was in their bones, and so they didn't want to give those back up for the fear of that energy being used against them. But Captain Cook's crewmen fired cannonballs in the village, killed the Kahuna Nui, beheaded a few Hawaiians, paraded their heads around on a stake, and they realized that the British were far more dangerous and brutal than they had once thought, so they gave those remains back ultimately, or part of them, and that was a defleshed leg and an arm, and that was all that was left of Captain Cook, and then he was buried at sea.
Yeah, I think I read King Kamehameha got his head.
It could be. Somewhere, we don't know. One thing that they did with their enemies, which the Hawaiians had sort of a wicked sense of humor, or however you would look at it, they would get the teeth of their enemy, or sometimes their jaws, and they would line their latrine with them. Kind of like, so Captain Cook might have ended up in that fate, who knows. And also growing more sugarcane for ethanol. And then on the other side of the island, if you get a chance to check it out while you're here, over near where that manta dive is the Natural Energy Lab of Hawaii. And there they use deep ocean water to generate electricity. And the way that that works is that they have a 4.5-foot diameter tube that goes 2,000 feet deep into the ocean, and it's a big loop. And within that loop, a current of water will begin to flow because of the differential temperature between the surface and the water temperature down at 2,000 feet. And so they can tap into the flow of that water and use it to turn generators to generate electricity. They can also use that super cool water to cool buildings. That would save a lot of electricity. In Honolulu, 52% of the electricity generated just goes towards air conditioning. So with all these alternative energy sources that we have here and more efficient ways to use that energy, there's the good possibility that the Hawaiian Islands could be independent of fossil fuels for electrical production and probably even operate at a surplus that we could one day use to produce hydrogen. So in another 20 or 30 years when there's a hydrogen economy, maybe Hawaii will be a part of that. Maybe we'll be one of the first members of OHEC instead of OPEC. Nice clear water on this side today. Usually it's churned up a lot. And the road going into the valley looks a lot steeper when you're driving it. And this beach is a lot bigger in the summertime. A lot of the sand gets washed away by the winter swells. I can see these flat top trees to our left. Those are monkey paw trees, originally from Malaysia. The pointy pine trees are Norfolk Island pines, originally from Norfolk Island, north of New Zealand. And the rusty, dusty green looking trees are Casuarina, originally from northern Australia and New Guinea. The light green puffy looking trees are the kukui nut trees brought by the Polynesians. The light brown grass on the cliffs is fountain grass, brought here in 1910. And then throughout this area are strawberry guavas, originally from the West Indies, and white and yellow ginger, originally from India. So we're looking at a completely different ecosystem than King Kamehameha would recognize. And this is the Waimanu Valley. Hawaiian means freshwater, Manu means bird, so it's the water bird valley, which makes reference to the waterfowl that hang out in the marshes in the valley bottom. And this first waterfall to our right is Waialakai Falls. Alakai means the one who leads or the one who goes first. So it kind of makes sense. Comes down about 1,800 feet on a series of falls.
Tim, is this the one from Jurassic Park?
No, they filmed that over in Kauai and Maui. So we do see a couple T-Rexes down here once in a while. There's a little campground down near the river mouth here. It takes about 6 or 8 hours to hike over here from the Waipio Valley. Now those rocks ahead of us were used in the Jurassic Park movie, like where they're coming towards that mystery coast and they're coming up. That was those rocks. Those are the Mokapuka rocks. And then between us and the Mokapuka Rocks, you can see that point of land. That's a new feature along the coast here that collapsed about 3 months after that earthquake. Kind of weakened that cliff. And now it's creating sort of a new surf break there, which is kind of cool. And out to our left is looking up towards the community of Waimea. That's where the headquarters of the Parker Ranch is.
Was that the same earthquake that did damage to Maui? There was a highway in Maui that got wiped out.
Yeah, the road to Hana. Yeah.
Road to Hana, right?
Yeah. And then this next large beach that you see is Hapuna Beach, most of which is a state park, and part of it's in front of the Hapuna Beach Prince Hotel. Next little community along the shore is Puako. It's a nice laid-back little spot with some nice vacation rentals. It's also a great place to go look for green sea turtles along the shore there. That's where I'm lucky enough to call home. That's actually, if you're gonna, are you gonna do any more diving while you're here? Is it,
Just tomorrow, but I'm here for a couple more weeks, so who knows?
oh, okay. Because I was just gonna say, you can just rent the gear at the dive store, or whatever, and just do beach dives there. I live in Puako, so just down like at the end there, there's a little place called Paniao, where there's a couple picnic tables and stuff. It's just a great place to get in there and then just dive right off the shelf there.
Good shore dives.
Yeah, awesome shore dives anywhere along there. And then where it drops off, there's kind of like a sandy little slope that goes down. You'll see that also when you get to where the mantas are, but there are a bunch of garden eels there and stuff like that. Cool. Anyway, beyond Puako, the next little resorts that you see there are the Fairmont Orchid and the Mount Alani, the last two are the Waikoloa Hilton and Marriott. The Waikoloa Hilton's got a really nice exhibit of art from around the world to include some nice Buddhist art from there, from Thailand and Cambodia. And there's also a dolphin encounter program there where you can swim with the dolphins, which is kind of cool. That way you can learn about the dolphins and they can learn about you. It's kind of a cultural exchange program. Anyway, that means we're almost home. So I'd like to thank you all for flying with Blue Hawaiian today. Hope you had a good time. When you get back home, if any of your friends, family, relatives, or strangers you meet on the street are coming to Hawaii and want to go on a helicopter tour, don't forget to mention Blue Hawaiian by name. We have bases here in Waikoloa and Hilo and also over on the island of Maui at the Kahului Airport and also on the island of Kauai. And we'd love to show them around. Or if you're going to one of the other islands and you want to go fly with us again, that'd be cool. We'd love to take you.